learning to forgive and to let go was the most powerful, amazing, incredible lesson that I've ever been gifted with. I never thought it was possible. I never actually thought that I could really be free of the struggles, of the challenges, of the experiences that I had had. And then I was given the beautiful instruction to just give it to the river. And this is the place that Hollywood to the Himalayas begins. And it's such a really precious joy to share it with you, sitting here on the banks of Ganga, where it all happened, where I walked into the river and was able, by grace, to actually let go, to actually become free. So this goes back now more than 25 years. This is September of 1996. Pujya Swamiji. This was me speaking to Pujya Swamiji. Pujya Swamiji, I whispered, fear runs my life. I have a sense of anxiety all the time, even when I don't know what I'm afraid of. You fear because you don't trust, he said, after a brief pause. I thought he would continue, but he didn't. Just that, lack of trust. Swamiji, really horrible things have happened to me that have made me unable to trust. And I told him the full story of my 25 years, childhood, sexual abuse and abandonment, struggles with bulimia, for which I was hospitalized several times. It was a story I had told many times throughout my life, and it never failed to elicit sympathy, open arms, and praise for how strong I am. But Swamiji just looked at me and he asked, are you going to take this to the grave with you? Oh God, no, I thought. Of course not. Are you going to let it go on your deathbed, just before you die? No, of course not, I replied. I don't want to take this unbearable pain to my deathbed. Will you let it go a week before you die? Maybe a month before you die? He continued to ask, never shifting his gaze from its lock on my heart. He continued to look at me calmly, with neither sympathy nor judgment. His presence stretched so wide, it was able to hold the love that poured from his eyes, the pain I had experienced, and even the perpetrator, Manny, my biological father. In Swamiji's gaze, there was room for everything. He said, you are waiting for someone to come and draw the line for you. You are waiting for someone to come and say, now you can be done. But no one will do that. You must draw the line yourself. The choice is yours. You can carry this pain to the grave. You can give it up on your deathbed, a week before you die, or a month before you die. Or, he continued, you can give it up tonight. Tonight? Seriously? Yes, tonight, he said. We have a beautiful ceremony at sunset called the Arti. After the Arti, go into Ganga and give her your pain. Take her water in your hands and give it all to her. Just give it to the river. If you give it, she will take it. Just give it to the river? I wrote over and over in my journal later that day, smiling as I replayed in my mind his touching, yet seemingly nonsensical instructions. I wasn't about to rely on a river to wash away my problems. Afternoon became evening, and I sat on the cool marble steps lining the banks of the flowing Ganga River as the sun began its descent. As the final rays of light danced on the waters, the sound of Vedic mantras filled my ears. I stopped giggling at this incredible suggestion that a river could sweep away my pain long enough to remember my vow from the airplane, to keep my heart open. I had taken a vow on the airplane to India that I would keep my heart open. So I remembered it at that time. To mock an instruction as seemingly useless as the one I had received today might be breaking my vow at the very moment it was most needed, particularly as this instruction had come from the mouth of someone revered as the divine, as an enlightened master, and particularly as my breath had stopped when he said it. Perhaps this was the reason I had come to India. During the evening light ceremony called the Arati, I allowed myself to be swept away by the song, the music, the chanting, the fire, the flowers. After the ceremony, as the guests began to disperse, I walked calf deep into the river. The moon was rising over the mountains and glistened on the surface of the sacred waters of the Ganga. The current tugged so forcefully on my legs that I wondered if I would have to give not only my pain, but also my entire body to this river. As the chanting dissipated in the background and the flow of the river tried to wrest my feet from its sandy bottom, I entered a silence so deep it was a place in itself, wrapping me in its arms. In that place of silence, I bent down into the water and carried out Swamiji's instructions. I cupped the river's water in my hands and offered all of my pain, all of my tears, all of my fear into the water that I held in my two hands. Please, you must forgive him, Swamiji had said. Give your anger and grudges to the water and then pour it back into the river. I stood up to my knees in Mother Ganga until the moon was directly overhead, all the while calling forth every image that had ever caused me pain, that had ever caused me to dissociate, that had propelled my head into a toilet vomiting. I recalled countless images that had formed the background of my life. And then, in the midst of these images, I saw him, my biological father, Manny. And from this place of imperturbable silence, I saw not a monster, but a troubled man who had made mistakes. I saw the violence and the sin he wrought upon me as simply mistakes of this disturbed being. I saw a man now far away who could no longer harm me, whose life was just as haunted by these choices as mine. And I saw a man who loved me despite his inability to express it. I saw a man I could forgive. Tears mixed with the water in my hands, and I prayed and cried and prayed and cried, all in silence. These were tears not of yesterday, but tears of today. Tears of release rather than tears of terror. Knowing I needed to embrace what is rather than what might have been. I called Manny's image to mind again, stared deeply into my biological father's eyes and said, I forgive you. Then I let the water pour from my hands back into the river. Take the pain, I prayed. I give it all to you. As the rest of the chapter in the book shares, even though I didn't think it was possible, even though I thought it was quite impossible, nonetheless, this sacred water, this sacred Mother Ganga, took that pain, took the whole identification that I had had as the one who suffered. And I share it with you because if it could happen to me, it can happen to you. Forgiveness, that ability to let go so we can be free, is the greatest perhaps power that as emotional human beings we have, to make a conscious decision to forgive and to let go so that we can be free. Wherever you are, whether you're here on the banks of Mother Ganga or anywhere in the world, see if you can let go. If you need more inspiration, pick up your copy of Hollywood to the Himalayas and you can read the whole rest of the book of how that forgiveness and transformation healed me, transformed me on every level, with the tools and practices that you can implement in your own life as well. And it's such a blessing to be able to share this with all of you. And so much love, so much love to all of you. And prayers for your freedom from these sacred banks of Mother Ganga.